Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to SIP, a sip of spiritual tea or spiritual truth. This is our spiritual interactive panel for this month's SIP. This is our first SIP, and we are going to be talking about psychic or psychotic. What are psychic abilities? We hear a lot about them. Do we have them? Do we not have them? There's a lot of things that we are going to be discussing. What I do want to let people know is after the panel has all taken turns to speak, that we will be opening up for questions. If you do not want your name or likeness on our recording, you can chat in, you can write in the chat and do your question there, and we will read it out loud and answer it. This recording will be used to promote the future SIP events that we have, and it will also be used for educational purposes. So we're going to share what our panel has to say today. I am going to start by introducing our panel, all who are practitioners with New Hampshire Metaphysical, who is the sponsor of this event. We have Lori Otto, Ginger Hendry, and we have Stacy Smith. They will all, when it's their turn to speak, introduce a little bit about themselves, their connection to the subject, and then talk about the subject. For those of you who haven't figured it out, I'm Kevin Ross Emery. Some of you, many of you may know me as Dr. Kevin. And so I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit about psychic or psychotic. And one of the first things is I always like to start by talking to people about my connection to psychic abilities. So I first found out or were talked to about having psychic abilities when I was 4 years old. I was playing a game with my grandmother. She told me what I looked like. I told her what she looked like when she was my age. Told her the way she wore her hair, the name of her best friend, and the song that they used to sing when they played together. And it was all correct. And my grandmother sat down and said to me, Kevin, you have a gift, and it's a gift from God. And people will tell you that it's bad or that it's wrong or that they don't believe you. But as long as you know it's a gift from God, everything will be okay. And so that began my psychic journey. Now, at 4, I didn't have like this, oh, yay, I'm psychic, or oh, no, I'm psychic. My Grammy told me, and she proceeded to give me not 1, but 2 hot homemade chocolate donuts as a reward. And to a 4-year-old, this was a good thing. I mean, let's face it, Grammy's hot homemade chocolate donuts. I was so fond of them. I have them to this very day. One rests on my left hip and one rests on my right hip. But my grandmother started me on the path of having this awareness that somehow I had this something and there was going to be some mixed energy. She passed when I was 8. She came to the end of my bed. I woke up in the middle of the night. She was there. She told me she had passed on, but that I still needed her and that she would be there for me. The next morning, when my mother came in and was crying and telling me that my grandmother had died last night, I was like, okay, what's for breakfast? And my mother left thinking he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand death. I remember sitting there thinking, Mommy doesn't get it. Grammy hasn't gone anywhere. And that was my reality. I had lots of different psychic events throughout my childhood. I started doing professional psychic work at 16, 17. It was the summer I went from 16 to 17. And to this day, I can't remember. Did I do my first psychic fair? Well, which side of the line? You'd think I would, but I didn't. All I knew is I would open up my mouth and I would do back then what I thought of more in the terms of just like psychic vomit. Blah! I would tell people across the table and people would go, that's amazing. And they would hand me money and I'd go, that's amazing. I was 16, 17, you know. But it also led me at that point to hook up with a group that met on a regular basis, doing metaphysical Sundays, studying different things. By my early 20s, I had already been introduced to astrology and tarot and numerology and hands-on healing and all of the different things. And then proceeded to spend the next 12 years being normal, college, working corporate America, doing all the things that made my mother proud, which being a psychic was never going to ever be one of them to this day in actuality, but that's okay. That's hers. So I started my full-time business as a spiritual catalyst, and doing spiritual coaching and counseling and catalyst work and psychic work and all of the different things. It's now over 33 years ago. It will be 34 in January. So let's just say I've been around the topic a couple of times. I've also, in those 33 years, spent 32 of those 33 years teaching psychic development classes, advanced psychic development classes, and helping people who wanted to go from, I think I'm psychic, to I know I'm psychic, to I feel like I'm called to do something with my psychic, to creating a full-time spiritual practice. So one of the first things that I like to talk to people about psychic is I kind of look at psychic as we talk about animals, and animals have instincts, right? The animal instincts. If humanity had to really live on its instincts, it would have been extinct years ago, millennia ago. But man wasn't as strong as most of the animal kingdom, with instincts. They were strong with intuitive, with that kind of something that was over time what today we talk about as being psychic abilities. And it was that access to the brain. And, in our SIP next month, we're going to be talking about what is a soul. And I don't want to get into that here, but it isn't about whether you had a soul or not. From my perspective, it is about that as every individual creature created under the sun has their own special areas where they have their gifts, their strengths, their talents. Intellect and intuitive, though there are days I wonder about the intellect part. The intellect and the intuitive were definitely part of the gifts of being human. Now, like with any gifts, it depends on whether you use it or not, as to whether it is really a gift. So on this, as I kind of look at psychic, I look at psychic as being the bridge between the unconscious and the conscious. And as we travel over that bridge, we are stepping into that part of ourselves where we are in the hue part of humanity. Hue is a very ancient term that means God, and hue man is man God. A non-gendered version, let me just put that out right off the bat, but human is man God. That we all have divinity within us. And again, this is something more we'll be talking about next month when we talk about a soul, but we all have divinity within us. And the psychic is the bridge where we go from the man to the hue side, and we can be accessing lots of different things. When I teach a psychic development class, I go over 20 different kinds of ways that the psychic does play out. And just like any other thing, there are some that are going to be stronger than others. Some people that are here today might be very talented if they pick up a guitar. Others might be very talented if they pick up a baseball bat. Some are very talented when they crack an egg. We all have gifts and talents that we roll with. And psychic is just like all those other gifts and talents. Anybody can basically sit down and take a finger and put it on a keyboard and make sound that, if you do it enough, is music. Might not be the greatest music, might not be the best music. It's probably not Chopin or Mozart's, but it's music. Same is true with psychic and psychic abilities. To me, we all have them. We all have access to them. The question is, did we come in here in this lifetime for us to make our psychic abilities a major part of our spiritual path in this lifetime. I will guarantee you that everybody that is on this panel today, that their soul contracts included the using of their psychic abilities. They came in to help the world with their psychic abilities. And so as we are talking about psychic abilities, and we talk about how some people, just like some people came in, like everybody on this panel and myself, that we have a major part of our life, which is about the utilization and the understanding of our psychic abilities, whether it's to teach it, whether it's to use it for healing, whether it's there to help people, whatever it is, that is part of our soul path. There may be people listening here who are coming to a place and they say, hey, I know I'm psychic, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. And maybe the time is coming where psychic is going to become a bigger part of your life soul path. Maybe this is the perfect time. Maybe you're here today because myself or one of these other people are going to give you that igniter fluid to say, I really want to understand and use my psychic gifts for the positive that they can be used for the gifts, for the talents of it. So just as that said, there are some people who come into a lifetime and they will never access their psychic abilities. And in fact, them not accessing it or not believing in it is part of their soul's journey in this lifetime. And they have their own things to do. Just don't let their thing to do stomp on your thing to do, which is to embrace, become empowered, and to use your psychic abilities to make your life, your world, and the world a better place. And so I'm going to step off my soapbox, and I'm going to pass it over to Lori Otto. Lori, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Wow. I don't know if I can top what Kevin just did. So I will tell you who I am. I am Reverend Dr. Lori Powers Otto. I do have a PhD in metaphysical theology. I am an ordained reverend through an actual church, not through the internet. And I wanted to be part of this panel because I get this question a lot. And it always takes me back to when I first really woke up to my gifts. I had them all my life, but you know, when you're a kid and you try to talk about it, people stomp on that. They're like, oh, it's your imagination, or you're just, you know, whatever. And you shut it down. And that's a shame, because every child is born with psychic gifts. Every child should be, in my opinion, should be encouraged to embrace them and explore them. It gives you a deeper connection to yourself, to the planet, to the animals, to everything. And it really can make your life so much easier when you embrace your gifts that you're given. And I do believe we are all given them. And whether you choose to use them or not, that's up to you. It's a shame to me when you don't use them. But like most people, I stuffed it down and went about life, you know, got married, had kids, had jobs, all that kind of stuff. And then when I was in my 40s, I got really, really, really sick. And the doctors couldn't help me. You know, they did all tests and procedures and put me on medications and all that stuff. And so I was in bed an awful lot. And I detest being idle. It makes me insane. So I had to find a way to use that time. So I found a online school, metaphysical school. It just happened into my lap one day. And I knew a bunch of people who were into metaphysics, some shamans, some psychics, even some reverends, you know, Catholic and UU and whatnot. And so I asked them about this school. Is this thing legit or is it crock? I mean, really, because I had no way of knowing. It was, and they all said, no, this is the best school you can go to. And I'm like, awesome. So I signed up, and one of the very first classes I had was on auras. And I didn't know the term. I wasn't really familiar with it. But when I'm reading it, I'm like, holy bleep, bleep, bleep. This is what I've been doing my entire life. It's real. It's a real thing. So I studied that course. And of course, I studied many, many more courses. And I went through a very interesting period where I learned to embrace that gift that I had. I also had, and now I use that gift to teach other people to see auras, because it just takes your life to a whole nother level. You can, I teach people who are dating, people who are hiring, people who are looking for jobs. I had one client who used it to buy her husband a car. She used it to check the aura of the car dealer, and the car dealership. So yeah, so I really embraced that, and I went, and then I realized all the other times I had psychic gifts that I wasn't using, like when you have that instinct put into you and you ignore it, or you hear something in your head. Well, for me, I hear and see things, which goes to the is it psychotic or psychic part. So I was hearing things, seeing things, sensing things, feeling things. I could taste things. I could smell things that weren't there. And honestly, it was overwhelming at first, right? Because I'm like, why is this all happening now? Why am I recognizing it? But I did the studies. I learned. I joined psychic groups. I made psychic friends, and I had people to talk to about it. So I didn't feel like I was psychotic, because we all know, we've all heard stories about crazy Aunt so-and-so who used to hear voices in her head, or the neighbor who was really a witch because she grew herbs and used them as medicine. So right. So when you start to get these, you wonder, right? Or you should anyway, I think. And I realized that this was a tremendous blessing in my life, a tremendous gift that I thank God for every day, honestly. I use it in every aspect of my life, whether it's talking to animals, talking to strangers, talking to my family, or just doing anything, driving down the road and I get a hit that says, you might want to turn right here instead of left. I will turn right every time, because I've learned to trust it. It has never failed me. I rarely have a negative encounter with anybody anymore. And so I really just want everyone to embrace these gifts that they have, because we all have them, every single one of us. It's just, as Kevin said, it can present different in people, because even like if you're a magnificent piano player, that's a psychic gift, right? I mean, I have a brother-in-law. He can just look at any instrument and play it. That's his psychic gift. So not all psychic gifts are, predicting the future for somebody or whatever, or tarot or palm reading or any of the million other ways. It's about listening to what's going on in you, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It all matters. And listening to that and using it to help you, first of all, help yourself and improve your situation and make your life better. But then after, you have to do that first, do your work first. And then you can go on and help other people. And you can, and that's not saying you must do this, because as soon as someone tells me that, I tell them to, what I won't say on the recording. But you give them a little guidance. Have you considered doing this instead of that? Or how does it feel if you think about doing this instead of that? And you're actually taking that gift and sharing it with other people and giving them the opportunity to develop their gifts and improve their lives. And, it's just like I said, it's been such a blessing in my life. But I do understand the fear of embracing your psychic gifts, of people calling you crazy or psychotic, or, it's just your imagination, you're out of your mind, whatever stupid thing people say. But I'm going to encourage you to embrace your gifts, deepen your gifts, learn as much as you possibly can, because it's just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gift. I don't know how else to word that. And I love sharing my gift. I mean, it allowed me to save a woman's life one day. I mean, that is something I will never forget, is when she came back and told me that because of what I said to her, she didn't die. And yeah, it's just incredible. Sorry, I get emotional when I think about it, because if she hadn't listened to me, the doctors told her she would have been dead. And not everybody's going to save a life, but that dramatically, but you may very well save a life, indirectly or directly. So yeah, that's my story and how I feel about it. And I just hope that you guys will join us and come back for more of these sips, because all the experts on here, they're amazing, incredible people. And but we are all just regular, normal people that chose to embrace our gifts.
Okay, Lori, thank you. And so I'm going to move on to our next practitioner. Before I do, Lori reminded me that there was one little thing that I had promised all the practitioners I was going to do, which was the psychic or psychotic title. And all I want to say about that before I introduce our next practitioner is that, as I said, I've been teaching psychic development for over 30 years, and I teach in all my classes, and I won't go into details. I want to get on to the next practitioner here, that I think it's upward to 80% of mental and emotional health issues, and even some percentage of physical health issues, which are misunderstood psychic abilities. Psychic abilities that either were deemed to be crazy, or made you crazy because you didn't understand how to work with them. And so I had said, because I chose the title psychic or psychotic, that I would make sure I addressed that, and I promptly forgot. So I apologize. And now I'm going to move on to the next one of our lovely panelist, Ginger Hendry. Ginger.
Like, man, I should have gone first. Hello, everybody. I am Ginger Hendry, and I am probably best known doing this work as an animal communicator. And that's really kind of how I stepped up, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But when I look back, Kevin mentioned at 4 years old, that his gift was there. His grandmother thankfully recognized it. Lori, the same thing, you kind of put it away for a long time and whatnot. For me, I grew up in a kind of a crazy family, not in a bad way, but there were a lot of people in the family and whatnot. And so my connection to animals, I was closer to my animals than I was to my rest of my family. And I always knew that I was connected to them. I knew what they were thinking. I knew what they were feeling, but it isn't something I don't remember ever hearing the word psychic. I wouldn't have even known what that would have been. It was just something I just did. I just assumed everybody did. And my belief with animals, which I'll get to after, I think everybody does do that. But the other thing is I lost my dad when I was 3. And I clearly remember being able to tell when he was with me. And I look back and I think I never told anybody that. I could tell when he was in the room with me. Occasionally I could feel a hand on the back of my shoulder, or I could feel I had a little ponytail, like little girls. I could feel the tug on my hair. And it wasn't scary or spooky. We weren't talking. I just could feel him there. Now, as I got older, the same thing with probably all of us, you grow up pretty traditionally. I knew things that might happen, but in my own life, and not because I thought I was psychic. Again, I wasn't really cognizant maybe of that word, but I just knew. I knew that we might be going here, or this situation might arise, and it was just normal. I don't ever remember talking about it. But as I grew up, I went off, to work, went to college, got married, had my kids, blah, blah, blah. And this is the God's honest truth. What happened to me, I was in corporate. I'm going to date myself. I started out of college with New England Telephone, which spun to all these, different entities. And I was in sales and marketing, and it was telecom. It was a tough market. I was there 23 years, and the last probably 18 months or 2 years, I was fried, completely fried. The bar was set so high to get things done, blah, blah, blah. And literally one day I had a home office, and I was on a conference call, and I had the TV on with closed captioning, and it was the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she had a panel of women that she was highlighting that had not gone back to their jobs, whatever they were, for different reasons. Some moved, probably most of them had children and couldn't go back. And so they started doing what they were passionate about. And I don't remember all of them. I remember one who had moved, married, bought farmland, and they had sheep, and they were sharing the sheep, which they had to do, but she was a knitter, and she thought, wow, I have all of this. I will buy, I don't even know what they are, looms or whatever they are for spinning. And so she started to spin her yarn, and then she thought, I can make things. I have a lot of yarn now. I will, kind of play around with dyes. And this is, I don't even know, 2000 maybe. And so she started this business that took off, and it was this like high-end yarn, and she was able to do it from home. She made a lot of money. That was sort of the crux of the show. And I remember towards the end of the show, my call ended, and I turned the volume on, and I remember Oprah Winfrey saying something to the effect, you need to find your passion and lean into it. You need to figure out what makes your heart sing. So as my corporate career, I was burnt out, as I said, and one of my teammates, my sales associate, said to me, this is a soul-sucking job. And that was the exact words. And that was the exact feeling that I had. And so I started to look, what am I passionate about? What lights my heart up? What makes my heart sing? And the only thing that I could come up with that really did it for me was animals. And so I looked at all different ways that I could work with animals and, whatnot, and it is a long story short. I ended up starting a pet sitting business, and people said to me, you won't be able to survive on that. You won't make much money. And I did. I had for 16 years, a very large, with employees and whatnot, business. And when I stepped into that business, I recognized not only did I have that ability to connect with my animals, that I was doing that with other people's animals. And the biggest thing that connected my psychic piece was I was walking an old bulldog one day, and I noticed he was limping. So when I got back to the house, I wrote a note for the woman and said, he's limping on the rear hind leg. Next day I came, and she said, thanks so much for telling me. I didn't notice it, but I'll keep an eye on it. So we went out, and I thought that was kind of strange. So I'm watching, no limp. And I said, well, that was really weird. So I take my eye off, and we're walking, catches my eye. I look back down. This went on multiple times during the walk. I'm like, what is that? So the next day, or a couple of days later, I guess it was, she called me and said, look, I saw him limping, took him to the vet. I'm taking him to the vet, so you don't need to come tomorrow, I'll call you. She called me that next night and said, I came home from lunch to take him to the vet, and his foot had swollen all the way up to his leg, up to his knee, where his knee would be. And he has a staph infection. And I thought, how weird is that? I thought I was seeing it with my eyes, but it came to me. I wasn't seeing it with my eyes. It was my mind's eye. And I had the ability to see things sort of before they happened in a health situation with that. And then I started to pay attention a whole lot more. I took a couple of animal communication classes. I sort of went off that path, and, it took off from there. I felt like my ability to connect was so much, I don't know what the right word is. I felt very comfortable with animal energy. And I spent a long time at the beginning of my career working with animals. But you work with animals, you work with their people. and I started to get information on people. And like probably everybody here, you take different classes, whether you're going to use it or not, you take something from that class. And so I did that. I started to look around at classes locally and sort of saw what, what might help or what I had an interest in, and it developed along the way. And I teach animal communication now, and I tell people you're already connected to your animals. And what you think, because I don't believe I'm anything or anyone different, there may be things that you're picking up from your animal you think you're seeing, or you think in some way, but I'm telling you, a lot of that information is coming in psychically, even if you don't recognize it. So I think for psychic ability, my opinion is we are all psychic, and everybody knows the expression, well, go with your gut. What is your gut telling you? That is intuition, and people feel comfortable with that. But in fact, we are getting information in all different ways. I think, Kevin, you said that we may not all be called to do this sort of as a soul contract or a life's purpose. And that's true. It doesn't mean that when you take a class, and I have to have a business in it. It just means I want to expand. I want to know what it's about. I want to know how my intuition works. And that's the key, I think, to everything. How do I work? I don't work the same way as probably anybody else on this panel. Some things maybe, but my gifts are my gifts. And I had to figure out, how do I work? How am I getting information? How can I help? How can I heal? And for me, that is the catalyst, to steal Kevin's word, for my business. I love to know that I'm helping in some way, connecting the person, whether it's in mediumship, whether it's in animal communication, whether I'm tapping into an Akashic record or whatnot. There is healing, there is knowledge, there is growth for that person. And if I feel like I have helped in some way, I know that that's my life purpose. That's what fills me up. That's what makes my heart sing. It's not just animals. It just has expanded. So, and I skipped the part where I left corporate. Obviously did leave corporate. I finally had enough. I'm done. And it worked out. It all worked out for me because I stepped on the path. I allowed things to happen. And I don't know, I had a focus on it. So I do think everybody has that ability, whether you lean into it like as much as we do on the panel, doesn't make a difference. Anything you take, anything you learn is soul growth. So I'm thrilled to be here. This is a big topic for me as well, because a lot of clients ask the same question, what is it? How does it work? How do I work? So thank you for allowing me to join, Kevin, today.
We are thrilled to have you. And so we're going to move on to our last but not least panelist. And I've already been told that we have 4 questions already built up from the audience. So once Stacy Smith has finished her introduction and her connection to her psychic abilities and her input about psychic, we're going to be hitting the floor running with questions from you, and I couldn't be more thrilled. So without further ado, we saved the best for last. How's that? Stacy Smith. Stacy, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Stacy Smith. I'm, oh my goodness, so many things. So founder of the Healing Power of Flowers Wellness Center and the Tao Sleep Institute, and those are both in Salem, New Hampshire. I do those with my husband, Bob. He's somewhere here in the little group hanging out watching us. So I'm a minister, a Reiki master teacher. I'm a Cabot priestess, a high priestess in a different temple, flower alchemist, hypnotherapist, and many other things. And I will just cut that short and really focus on the psychic part, which first and foremost, I'm a channel. So I'm kind of like the cosmic Google bringing information in. So I've got the full set of psychic skills, in addition to being an empath. As a channel, I channel a collective of 3,000 different beings that in a nice little package call themselves 7 makes it easier. Many of them are on the 7th dimension, so that makes it easier for me as well. Channeling sounds great, but in my opinion and in my experience, it's one of the most dangerous forms of psychic practice or divination, and one that I think requires care and a lot of work and a lot of training instead of doing it haphazardly. I found out the hard way that it's not necessarily the easiest. And I do many different forms of divination. I do animal communication and medical intuition. Again, all that plays into my different work in my center. In addition to oracle work and card reading and dowsing. I also use dowsing very much in my work, but I guess it really goes back to a whole lifelong journey. I come from a multi-generational family of healers and psychics, and it's really been an interesting journey learning to work with my abilities. Like it was a given. It's just what we all did as a family. We just never labeled it that. And my mother's side of the family is heavily Catholic. So you just didn't call it that. We just moved through the world that way. And it was also a very heavy connection to plants and the earth and working with the animals. So I really got those foundations from my grandparents, my dad. If you had a problem, you went to the garden and we would consult the plant spirits or the plants themselves. So again, that's a very big part of my work as well. So I actually am the neighborhood witch who makes things to help with plants and herbs to help people, which has saved me on my journey with Lyme disease. So my intuition has helped me after 26 years of being misdiagnosed with Lyme disease, co-infections, and many other illnesses, hence how my wellness center came to be. And it was really a surrender point where I finally gave in and listened to intuition and listened to guidance and stopped fighting it when they said, this is where you need to be. And I just went whole hog into flower essence training. And I was the weird kid in class that I didn't have a damn clue why I was there, but I was no longer arguing with spirit. And they said, just show up and do it. And that was the turning point that really saved my life. And I was able to finally start figuring out what was wrong with me, where hundreds of doctors had failed me for more than 26 years. So I'm here really because of spirit. It's been a heck of a journey. When I was 13, that's really when I started doing more formal training. And again, that was very spirit guided. We were on vacation and it was like a little switch went off in my head, and spirits like, we just happened to be in a bookstore and spirits like, no, turn around. You need to buy these books. One of them was on by Edgar Casey, and one of the others was by Ken Carey, and that was a channel book. And that started my study and training in the metaphysical field more formally to learn things. And I studied really still ongoing in different capacities and different trainings through Edgar Casey's Association for Research and Enlightenment. So when I couldn't figure out what job was right for me, somebody gave me a piece of advice and said, you need to do the one thing that you can't live without. And I didn't want to face that, because we just being brought up Catholic, you just didn't do that, because those were bad things. Like, to put that label psychic was a bad thing. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he's like, you just need to accept the fact because my dad wasn't Catholic. He was Methodist. And he's like, you're a witch and just embrace it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to do something bad, because that's how we were brought up. But even on the path of training in college, even though I went to a Catholic college, I was studying world spiritual development. So I was lucky. I was the kid. That's how I fulfilled my religious requirements. And I was still doing the work even then. And also doing my spiritual work as a campus minister then. And the one thing that I couldn't live without when it came to career was my connection to the other classes and doing psychic development, because that was the one place that it was safe for me to hang out with other people that were like me. I wasn't the weird kid in the room. I wasn't doing bad stuff. That was my space where it was okay to be me. And my journey was also with my mom, who she and I had, and my grandparents too, but I lost them when I was younger. And my mom's family have telepathy, and we had that really strong connection. But as I lost my grandparents and then lost my mom as a teenager, it was like having that connection was like having part of my body severed off. So as a psychic, that was like incredibly traumatic for me. And it's only in the last few years that I've been able to start finding other people with telepathy to connect with. And again, I want to circle back to having different abilities come in at different times. So another way that my abilities came in was when my dad was sick in the hospital, and I was his proxy. I literally had his life in my hands on how I was going to make a decision, and he couldn't communicate anymore. And the doctors couldn't figure out how I would know which tests to order and how I would know something was going to happen. And I was scared to death at the time to tell them, but I just told them, you just need to do this. And they're like, we don't know how you do it, but every time you're absolutely right. And we don't know how you know that this is going to happen. I'm like, just do it. We're not going to have a conversation, because I still wasn't going to put a label on it. And doing different training and becoming a cabot and working with different temples, having that label helped me own who I was, like all of who I was. And also got me good foundations, because over the years, and I just wanted to address this real quick, even though I'm almost out of time, is having safe foundations, knowing how to work your abilities is so critical, because as my abilities increased over the years, my anxiety would go through the roof. And you really can't be doing responsible psychic work if you're not able to maintain your vibration. So being able to have some sort of sense of structure and how to control your abilities and understand what's going on and how to dial things down when you need to and shield yourself was a really long, expensive process for me. And I'm so grateful that I've had it. But it was a lot of trial and error and learning the hard way. But I do understand, since I don't think anybody's really addressed that today, that different psychic abilities, especially if you're an empath or medical intuitive, that can wreak havoc on your life. And really being able to have resources, like we've got so many beautiful other practitioners here today that are amazing teachers, that can help give people guidance. So I wanted to make sure, I know I'm going to hand it back over to Kevin, but I at least wanted to give you that segue.
Well, thank you so much for that, Stacy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have Mindy is going to ask questions. She let me know that some of what you covered, you little psychic witch, you covered some of the questions that people were asking. I'm going to have Mindy still ask those questions in case any of the rest of us want to weigh in on them. But, you know, this is why we have a panel. There's so much to be said on this subject. There's so many different places where any of us could have gone and ran out of time to go there. I could see Stacy, like I was going, come on, I need more, I need a little more, I need a little more. So Mindy, we're going to turn it over to you and let you start to share the questions. And then after she asks the question, I'm going to ask my panel if they want to try to answer it, to raise their hand. And, you know, we can all answer it, or just one person can answer it. Let's just see what the questions are.
So yes, so Stacy was talking about the anxiety and her growth process. The first question was, how can we tell what spirits are influencing us? Which leads into the second one, kind of questioning, how are they influencing us? Can we tell if they are positively or negatively influencing us?
Okay. I'm going to throw something out, and then I'll see who else would like to chime in. Let me know. So when I do my psychic development class, in the first class, the first thing I do is teach people how to do protection and intention statements. That nobody should be working with their psychic abilities and be just wide open for whatever flies by. If you have negative in the physical realm, you have negative in the energetic realm. It's not like that just because they're not in body doesn't mean that they're suddenly perfect and loving. In fact, one of the things I always remember was from one of my channels, which was Key, who talked about, in this specific case, aliens, and said, everybody has an agenda. So any alien that contacts anybody on Earth, the first question should be, hey, what's your agenda? Same thing with any other psychic ability. And there is an interesting question, and maybe in 2024, we should probably do a SIP panel on the difference between talking to being a psychic, talking to disincarnate entities, and talking to aliens, because they're not the same thing. But I'm just throwing that out there. Who else would? So yes, if you have a protection and intention statement, you understand about your psychic abilities. And the other thing I always teach, which Stacy referenced to, which is psychic's like a muscle. The more you work with it, the stronger it gets. In it being stronger, you are going to attract more energy. When you brighten your light, you bring more moths to your flame. And some of those moths are not going to be moths. They're going to be mosquitoes. And we all know what a mosquito is, a bloodsucker. So Ginger, Lori, do you want to weigh in? And Stacy, you're welcome to weigh in again if you would like, but you kind of covered it in your talk. Do either of you have anything, or should we go to the next question? Ginger, go ahead.
I 100% agree with what you just said, Kevin. But the one thing that I want to say is when I'm doing intuitive work, I really, a lot of times am called to tell the person I'm working with how powerful their soul is, how powerful you are. Because when somebody gets into that, situation, or they're anxious about attracting a negative energy, or they think they've attracted a negative energy, is to realize that they do have boundaries, that there are things they can do to protect themselves. And they have a very strong soul. We all have very strong souls. And I just, you used the word at the beginning, empowered. And that is, probably in all intuitive work, I think what we want to do, we want to help people feel empowered, empower themselves in their own life. And I think using the protection that you mentioned is the key.
Great. Lori, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that. Because, my understanding of the question is, how do you know if you're being influenced by positive or negative energies? And the thing is, as you said, putting personal protection on at all times is very important, that you're not just leaving yourself wide open to anybody tapping into you. You do have control over who you interact with and who you don't. And I know many people who've come to like the psychic circles and stuff have heard me say, I have a personal prayer or mantra that I say that has never failed me. And I think everybody needs to, when they're developing their psychic gifts, come up with their prayer of protection and be very clear on who you want to interact with, that you're not open to low level energies or whatever. And like I said, I just think it's very important that we all reiterate that. And I know we all do when we're teaching classes and stuff, but it's a very important aspect of doing any psychic work.
Okay, we have, oh, Stacy, did you want to add something before we go to the next question?
I do, because it's very topic specific. So one of the things, and we're not addressing this, and I think this is really important, if we're talking like psychosis, because I've dealt with, you can have some clients coming in, which I have had, that are psychic, but some of them are also like legit delusional schizophrenics that need help. So one of the things, and I think it's, I'm not going to go down a deep hole here. In some cases, I'm just going to use that as an example. Some of those clients have heard messages or heard beings talking to them that are saying negative things. And again, that's something that needs to be addressed to make sure people are having good mental health. But again, you need to make sure and look at what is being communicated. Is it to lift you up or tear you down? If it's a guide, it's not going to badger you and be belligerent and be negative. And I know some people, not everybody works in light. I do, but not everybody does. But you got to be so careful with who's coming in, whether it's a guide or a loved one who's passed, and really pay attention to how that energy is coming in. I just thought that was really important.
Yep, absolutely. And, one of the things that, you commented on is that somebody can have strong psychic abilities and still have chemistry that creates a mental or an emotional or a traumatic. Now, sometimes the trauma that creates the mental health issue is by being a very powerful empath or a very powerful psychic. And because they didn't know how to deal with it, they weren't believed because of, they didn't know as a child that things that were actually real, that were psychically real to them, they were made to feel like they were delusional. And so, there's always this path we want to get into, but I do want to get into because I know we have more questions. So Mindy, somebody has popped up with the question, but I'm going to save that to after you read the questions. I'd like to do them in order. So Mindy, where are you? You're not on my screen.
Yeah. So just still kind of in the same vein, is there a way we can check our field to see what is attached to us and how can we remove them?
Okay, so I'm going to go out the gate again, and then I'll see which of the lovely other panelists would like to raise their hand for this. So it can be hard sometimes to know what is attached to you when you're in the throes of it. But if the thought process has come to you that you think there's negativity around you, that something is attached to you, that something may be interfering. And again, it's the difference between, have you ever studied your psychic abilities? Have you ever taken any classes? Have you trained with anybody? Do you know how do they work? Do you do shielding? Do you do protection and intention statements? I won't work with anybody that's an empath for, without teaching them how to shield properly, because there's a lot of bogus shielding out there in the new age spiritual community that ain't worth jack whatever, and just not worth jack. And so starting to delineate, is there a negative energy attached to me, or does my personal empathy, which is a kind of psychic ability, vibrationally pull in other people's negativity, and I become their emotional dumpster? I become their psychic dumpster. Is my radio station tuned to that negativity? So there's a difference about, is the negativity attached to you, or are you calling it to you? Because you can't always tell the difference. But if you have the thought process if it comes to you, as far as I know, and somebody here may have a different opinion, and all opinions are valid and everyone should take what resonates to them. I don't know of a magic wand that says, yes, no. Even a pendulum can be affected. So I would say that's when you seek out a professional, somebody that you are drawn to, somebody that's going to be able to look at it from the outside, going to be able to determine, are you drawing it to you? Is it being pointed at you? Is it attached to you? How do you clean it? And oftentimes negative energy will attach to you because it attaches to a trauma you have that you've never resolved, that maybe you struggle with depression and it attaches to that. Maybe there is a loss you have never grieved. So usually if it attaches, it's attaching to something. It has to have something to attach to. And so in that, I've had people that have come to me through the years and they go, oh, I've seen a dozen people and they all keep sending it away and it keeps on coming back. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's because there's that little part of you that never got healed that says, hey, good time, over here, find me. Because as long as you are radiating out that vibration, the universe is sending you exactly what you're asking for. So you will do the work to heal it. And not just think that somebody else is going to do the work for you to get rid of it. Because as one goes out the front door, another one comes in the back door. It's just waiting in line to say, get a clue, deal with this issue, clean up your side of the street, and then they'll have nothing to attach to. And not only can we make them go away, they won't come back. Panel, do I see any raised hands before the next question? Okay, next question.
The last question that I have is, what are some reasons our channeling could get blocked?
So I think there's a few reasons. Would anybody like to go first? Because I keep on going first. I don't mean to hog this. If not, I'll do mine and then open up. Okay. So our channeling can get blocked. If we're doing bad shielding, it can block our channeling. If we're doing one of these loopy doopy, oh, the angels protect me, or I'm just in this like impenetrable fortress. Well, guess what impenetrable means? Your channel just got shut down. Your higher self may shut your channel down if you are out there hanging out on bad street corners, getting ready to bring in bad things. So are you doing protection? It could be sometimes your channel can get shut down because your spirit guides or people from the other side are actually trying to get you to realize that you're cruising the wrong corners and you're going to bring in the wrong stuff. Sometimes it can be a trauma inside that is coming out and wants to heal, and you have a trauma which is coming up. And I have found on multiple occasions that somebody who was suddenly discovering their psychic abilities and was going good and it was going good and it was going great and it was going fabulous, and then it went away, reached a place where they had traumatic issues with their psychic abilities in their childhood they never remembered, and they got to a certain place, and now they were at a place where those traumas could be remembered and healed, but they had to, their psychic abilities came and kidnapped them, and they and took them for a ride long enough for them to go, I don't doubt it, I have them, they're not bad, I'm not going to get burned at the stake, no one's going to stone me, whatever. But so these are some of the reasons that I find people's abilities. And then, and here is the one that no one ever wants to hear. You stop hearing your psychic speak to you and through you because you don't want to hear what it has to say, because you are resistant to the message it's giving you. And so so you shut it down because spirit is saying, well, really what you need to do is, and you're like, talk to the hand, talk to the hand. I don't want to hear that. That's not what I asked for. And I always tell people, you know, like Lori talked about her opening, I do an opening every time I do psychic work with somebody. It's the same opening. It's been the same opening for 30 plus years. I've done it a good million times at this point. But one of the things I say in it is, do not ask questions you do not want answers to. So if suddenly your psychic is shut down, you might want to think, what was the last question you were asking your psychic before it shut down? And if sometimes your psychic goes, oh yeah, no, you're not getting anything more until you get the answer to this question. That's not how it works, sister. You're gonna have to get the thing you don't want to hear. You got free will, don't have to do anything with it, but you got to hear it. And then we'll let all the rest go. Do any of my lovely ladies want to chime in after that? I saw lots of smiles. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
I know we're over time already and stuff, but what you said is so important, and people need to understand that when your psychic abilities finally just get shut down, it's usually you who shut it down. You know, that's like you said, you're either not ready to progress, you argue with spirit, you know, you keep saying, no, I want another answer. This isn't a, you know, spin the wheel until you get the answer you want. You know, spirit tells you what you need to know. And if you keep dissing spirit and you know, saying no to the guidance, spirit's going to put you in a timeout until you figure it out.
So we had one other one that was put out. Mindy, if you want to read it out loud, we can do a quick addressing. We said this, I just want to say this. We said it was an hour, but I also put out in a lot of places that as long as people stayed and asked questions, we would be here to answer them. We want to be respectful of people's time, and certainly if somebody needs to leave. I see one last question. After that, I'm going to ask all of my panelists for any closing remarks, so they get to think about them now. Well, we look at this last question, and then I want to quickly talk about the SIPs that are coming up, so people will know what we've got in the SIP future. What is in your future with SIP?
So the last question is about telepathy and the way that information is received. I notice that I think of something and then my husband speaks the same thing I thought. Do I receive the information first and he reads it and speaks it?
So
Thoughts?
I read this and this is what I thought. And then again, any of the panelists that want to weigh in. If you were standing into a room with your husband and the radio turned on and you both heard what the radio said, who heard her first? I don't know. It is possible that your telepathic bond is so strong that one of you heard a message from spirit or a thought. It could be that the thought was prevalent, or whoever is reaching out was reaching out to both of you. So maybe sometimes it's you, maybe it's sometimes your husband, maybe sometimes the radio just turned on and you were both on the right frequency and it came in. And I have had a few people through the years that I have had extremely strong telepathic, to the point that nobody can be in the room when the two of us are talking, because we say 3 words in a 50-word sentence and the other one starts replying after the 3 words and everybody else is looking like, what do you even know if they're talking about? They said, and you know what? And then they go, yeah, and I found that, yeah. And then there was, yeah, absolutely. When you have a strong telepathic connection with somebody, you can bug the crap out of everybody else in the room. And you may not even realize nobody else heard the end of the sentence, but you heard it in your head. And that will happen. And pay attention. Sometimes somebody will go, I know I told you. Or I didn't tell you that. Well, that can all be forms of telepathy. Does anybody else want to answer this question? Okay, so I'm going to take a second, talk about the upcoming SIPs.
I think, well, Stacy had something.
Oh, Stacy, did you? Go ahead.
I was just gonna just add on to that. That's a really, like, telepathy is a really big topic. And like there's the whole 100 monkey concept of collective consciousness, and how like one group of island of monkeys washes their food first, and then on a completely different isolated island, all of a sudden other monkeys start washing it, and they had never done it before. Well, there's a collective consciousness with like everything on the planet. So people tap into it. I tap into it when I'm making remedies with plants, because the plants have a collective, animals have a collective. So it's what level you're tapping into. And then there's also the direct, like you were just talking about, Kevin, the direct telepathic connection person to person. So it's just in the interest of teaching purposes, that's a really huge field, and it's not always helpful to lump it all in together.
Yep.
Just for anybody interested in studying more about it.
Absolutely. So I am going to ask each one of these panelists to do a closing statement. Before I do that, I'm going to give them an extra minute to think about it, since I didn't warn them before we started that I was going to do this. And I'm notorious, for those of you who have ever been on my radio show with me, that I do this to people. I don't mean to. I'm going to talk about the upcoming SIPs. And you will get links if you would like to sign up for any of these SIPs in an email that will be generated out to everybody that's on the call today. And then they are all available sometime this week on New Hampshire Metaphysical. On 9/10, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, what is a soul? Are there more than one kind of souls? Do I have one? If so, how do I communicate it with it? Our panelists, I will be your host again. Ginger Hendry, who is here, will be joining us to talk about soul. And then we're also going to be welcoming Nancy Smith and Ashley Olstein, two of our other practitioners. On 10/8, do heaven and hell exist? What and where is heaven? Hell, do they even exist? Lori Otto will be joining us for that. And Stacy's husband, Bob Menard, Reverend Bob Menard, who's here today. Bob, you can put your camera on if you want and wave in case people want to get a visual of you. But Raina Wiltz, Lori, Raina, Robert, and I will be hosting that one on 11/12. Have we lived before? Will we live again? Is this our first life on Earth? Is it our last life on Earth? Is it our only life on Earth? Stacy will be back for that, with sharing some perspectives from somebody with a they call a near-death experience, which is always confusing to me. Raina Wilson and Ashley Olson will be back, and I'll be your host. And then on 12/10, what is the truth about angels? And we'll have Nancy Smith, Mari Katagenevieve. I am pronouncing her name.
Cartagenova.
Cartagenova. Thank you, Miss Mindy. And I've had her on my radio show. And Bob Menard, Reverend Robert Menard, will be back for that one as well. So that's our upcoming SIPs. I'm going to do reverse order. So I'm going to start with Stacy. Any closing thoughts or statements to our people here?
My biggest suggestion or thoughts is good self-care, good energetic hygiene. Really learn from quality people that have a good background, and also make sure whatever you're learning is correct and in your highest best interest, because what is absolute and correct for one person is not necessarily, because there's so many different abilities. I mean, other than protection, I would say protection is a blanket overall and clearing for everybody. You got to pay attention and develop your own skills, your own training from quality people, because just everybody who hangs a shingle out there that says they're a teacher doesn't mean they've really done the work and done the time. And get help from quality people if you feel your abilities are starting to control you. At least from my experience, the biggest thing is staying in the driver's seat and being in control of my abilities and having choice on how I want that to express in my life instead of letting my abilities run my life. So that's my biggest suggestion, because you get to be in the driver's seat and decide how you want things to run.
Thank you, Stacy. Ginger, like I said, I'm going to go backwards on this. Closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I wanted to say thank you. I love this topic, and I'm so glad that people, jumped in to join us. I agree with Stacy on a lot of her points, and I think that in order to kind of see how you work, it is important to either take classes, read books, be in the same sort of tribe, I guess we would say, so that you can share information. Doesn't mean you have to have a business, doesn't mean you have to actually express that to help others. This is really about empowering, and I love that word. Your soul, empowering yourself to do the things that that call to you. So thanks again for having me.
Ginger, always a delight, and we're looking forward to having you back next month for What is the Soul? Lori, closing thoughts.
Well, I also just wanted to thank everybody who came today and was part of this. Thank you for having me. I do think this topic is very important. And as you know, the other panelists have said, it's important to, when you're ready to embrace your psychic gifts, and to find quality mentors, because it is about self-empowerment. It is about self-care. And so I encourage everybody to seek out the teachers. Obviously NewHampshireMetaphysical.com. We have a lot of wonderful quality teachers that have many subjects you can learn. And I thank you and hope to see you guys next time.
So I want to thank all of my panelists. You all brought something unique to the table, sharing your stories. I think that oftentimes it's the sharing of the story that somebody that can identify that will give them that little push, give them that encouragement, give them the courage to claim and own who they are. The word empowerment came up several times, and I always define empowerment as the power to be uniquely who you are without apology. You shouldn't have to apologize, because your psychic gifts allow you to sometimes know things, or to know or to get a sense around something, or to even reach out to somebody, whatever. If you pay attention and stop letting any intellectual indoctrination or trauma that may have come from your past, your family, your religion, whatever, stop minimizing it, you might step into a larger version of yourself. When people say to me, why would I want to get a psychic reading? I go, well, first of all, the future's not in granite. And that's one of the points I wanted to make sure that got made today. The future is shifting and changing. We have free will. We can influence things. So if you go to a quality psychic, and I'm going to say it that way, if you go to a quality psychic, they can give you more information with which to make better decisions. You should never give your power away to a psychic. You should never give your power away to a doctor or a lawyer or a judge or a parent or the voices in your head that tell you you're not good enough. Don't give your power away. But take the power of the psychic, of accessing the divine, accessing the collective unconscious, and add that in as part of your mathematical equation when it's time to make decisions, when it's time to move forward. And you can weigh it appropriately. It is important that you understand who you are, what you want to do with your psychic abilities, why you want to do it. Those are all very important things. that I work with and teach with people as they really want to claim a larger part of their psychic journey. We invite you to check out any and all of our panel. If you go to newhampshiremetaphysical.com and go to our practitioner directory, you will find how to contact any of them and myself as well. We would love to hear from you. And again, we have a psychic message circle August 18th. If you want more information on that, you can go to newhampshiremetaphysical.com. Our next SIP is September 10th. What is a soul? We also have other events on our calendar of things that our practitioners are doing. So stop by. We want to thank you all very much for coming. And, remember, the more you become you and the more you accept you, the more you bring the gift that you were born to bring to the world. And not everyone is going to be receptive to it. Not your problem. Namaste. And thank you for coming.